Kaidem Yitzeres Havlad, Bas Kol Yaitzeis by Meretz Bas Pliny LePliny. So he asked me, why is it important to know this? Why do we need to know? Why does a Bas Kol have to come out and tell me who somebody's going to marry, who the kids are going to be? So I told him, I said, the truth is, it's a tremendous source of nechama to people, because people go through sometimes hard times with the children. Especially nowadays, unfortunately, it seems maybe more common. But people go through hard times, and they say to themselves, how am I supposed to face this challenge? The answer is that the Gemara tells you that the Rebbeinu Shalom was the one who was geyser, that this child should go to this parent, and this parent is going to have that child. That means that the Borei Kol Olamim programmed you for whatever it is that you need to reach that child. Even if you can't, you have a hard time finding it within yourself, but it's there. And that child, with all of his challenges, was nigzar that he should have that father and that mother. So it's a match. It's not a match that happened by itself. It's a match that the Rebbeinu Shalom set up. The same thing, why do I mention it? The Payton says on Rosh Hashanah, at the beginning of Shacharis, Yaresi bivtzaisi siach lahaschil. I'm afraid to open up my mouth and speak. And the truth is that I feel a little bit the same way. I know that you've been zeicha for many, many years. You had Rabbi Fried sitting in this chair. And it's funny because my first memories of Rabbi Fried, Rabbi Vigdor, are in the basement shul of the Aguda with Gavriel sitting on the steps, going up the steps to the outside, to the door. So, but he's an Adam Gadol Ad Ba'od, and I'm mispal that I should be able to fill his shoes and do justice to the position that he had all these years.
2 questions.
You ready? Are you ready on that? Yeah.
Everything. First of all, what's the rabbi's name?
My name is Yisrael Weiss.
So, related to Rabbi Weiss?
Moshe Meir is my brother. That's his claim to fame.
So we have to watch out. Number 2.
Yeah.
What is this zivuk stuff?
What do you mean?
The Rambam says zivuk is a mitzvah to get married, and Hashem doesn't get involved in mitzvahs.
The Gemara says the Gemara says that the Rebbeinu Shalom is geyser. We know the Rebbeinu Shalom is mezavik zivugim.
I know what the Gemara says.
It's Kriyas Yamsuf.
The
Rambam says is that the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't get involved in whether we're going to be Mekayim a mitzvah or not be Mekayim a mitzvah. Hashem doesn't make us do it or make us not do it. That we have bechira. But ultimately, what happens is something that he was geyser. But we'll have that discussion if you want after the shir. That's not germane. But the reason I mention it is only that somehow the Rebbeinu Shalom was mazmin me that I should sit in this chair. So hopefully I should be able to do it justice. Now, I think Rabbi Fried mentioned that we're going to, I know that you've been holding somewhat behind, but we are switching now to the Dirshu schedule. So we are picking up today where Dirshu is holding today, which is Kuf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph in Chelik Gimel. We're going to begin with Siman Shin Lamed Sif and Ches. That's one thing. One other diversion that I would like to make, unless there's a strong opposition to it, is that I know that Rabbi Fried was in the custom of having the Divrei Musar first and the Divrei Halacha second. At least at the outset, I would have a preference to do it the other way. And the reason for that is simply that the Mishnah Berurah is the chelik of the share that's on the clock, so to speak. That's where we have a schedule that we have to keep to. And not having said Dirshu Shiurim in the past, I personally am a little bit uncomfortable. I don't yet know the timing, how long it has to take. So I would prefer to begin with the Mishnah Berurah and have the Divrei Musar afterwards, because that's not on a clock. If there's a strong preference the other way, we can talk after the shir, and let's see how it goes. So with that said, we're going to begin Siman Shin Lamed and Sif and Ches. Now, I'm going to give a drop of background only because we're picking up in the middle of a topic. What Shin Lamed is talking about, Siman Shin Lamed, is Dine yoledes b'Shabbos, the dinim that pertain to a woman who gives birth to a child on Shabbos. The Mechaber already covered how you comport yourself with the yoledes herself, what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do in the context of being Mechal Shabbos for the yoledes, who certainly is a chayla sheyesh by sakana, and in many instances there's questions of pekuach nefesh with the yoledes. So that Mechaber already covered to this point. Here the Mechaber is picking up in Sif Ches. We're speaking about the dinim of a child that was born prematurely. Now, there's an important piece of background, and it's interesting because I'm actually going to begin with a Dirshu footnote, not with the Mechaber. I had a conversation with a pediatrician this morning. I called him up about a different halacha that we'll see today. But in the course of the conversation, he told me that, we see many instances in Divrei Chazal and in halacha where we see that the teva seems to have changed over the years. Now, we could see this right away because we know that pre-Mabul, we had people living 900 plus years. Even after the Mabul, we still had 700, 600, 500. So certainly, the teva over the time since Priyas Olam did change. But one thing is very fascinating. We see very clearly, not only in halacha, but even in Chumash and Rashi, there were two types of pregnancies. There were 7-month pregnancies and there were 9-month pregnancies. The way we look at pregnancy is 9 months, 39 weeks, 40 weeks, whatever it is. And a baby that's born preterm is a preterm baby, is a premature baby. But in halacha, there's a 7-month baby, an 8-month baby, and a 9-month baby. A 7-month baby was full term. Just it was a 7-month baby, not a 9-month baby. Then there's a 9-month baby. An 8-month baby was a 9-month baby that was preterm. And a 9-month baby in Divrei Chazal and in halacha was a baby that was not going to survive. An 8-month baby was a baby that was not going to survive. Chashiv Kemes, an 8-month baby. Now, we don't have this. We have babies nowadays that are born at 25 weeks, 24 weeks, even 23 weeks sometimes, that survive with medical intervention, But the point is that because of that, a lot of the halachas that we learn about a preterm baby, well, I have a halakha that says that you can't be Mechal Shabbos for a preterm baby. It says right away, the Rav Shlomo Zalman, I think it's here in the Dirshu in footnote 30, in the middle, he brings down, not from Rav Shlomo Zalman, he brings down from Rav Vosner, Tzadik Levracha, Ubishal Zetchuvi Shevet Alevi, Shebizmanenu Sheyoidim Lahachia Isgam Es Misha Noilid B'Chodesh HaChamisha Yashishi. Nowadays, when we can have a baby survive even in the 5th month or the 6th month, mutter v'chayavim l'chal Shabbos lahatzalasai. It not only is it mutter, but you're obligated to be l'chal Shabbos to help this baby survive. Even if it doesn't have the marks of development that Chazal used. Chazal said if a baby is born and has underdeveloped fingernails, underdeveloped hair, that was considered a baby that was not going to survive. Says Rav Vosner, nowadays there's no such thing. Nowadays, of course, we have to be Mechal Shabbos for such a baby. So we have to keep that in mind when we see what the Mechaber says here in Sif Ches. Zok the Mechaber, Noilad Lishmoina, a baby that was born after 8 months, Oy Safik ben Shiva, Oy ben Shmoina, or if we are in doubt, we don't know if this was a ben Shiva or ben Shmoina, Shaloi Gamru Sa'aroi Vitziparnav, and his hair and his fingernails are not fully developed, Asur L'taltaloi. Not only you're not going to be Mechal Shabbos Daraisa and do a malacha to save this child, this baby is muktzah. Because, like the Gemara says, he's nechshav kemes. The Brisa in Masechta Shabbos says, Harehu ke'even. It's like a stone. It's a muktzah makmas gufay. Not allowed to be metaltal this baby. Not allowed to touch it, says the Mechaber. Now, if you take a look in the Mishnah Berurah, it says, Sif Katan Lamed Aleph, a suffix. If it's a suffix ben Shiva or ben Shmoina, for Akroinim Eskim with the Dafka Kishi Yedua Shu ben Shmoina, that this halach of the Mechaber only applies if we know for certain that this was an 8-month baby. How would you know for certain? Kigain shabal uperash. If we know that the husband had relations with his wife and then left. So there's no way that this could be a 7-month baby. It has to be an 8-month baby. Avo misafik, but if there would be a suffix, metaltalinam kaltinaik, we would handle any baby. And indeed, the Dirshu over here in Sif Cotton in 31, he says, Umasha asru letaltal tinuk ben shmayna chadashim, this that we say that an 8-month baby you're not allowed to be metaltal is muktzah, das again Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, shemeduber betinuk sheshoichev leloi tenua ve'ena boicha klal. We're talking about a baby that is basically not conscious. We're talking about a baby that is immobile, is not making any noise, anything. If there's any sign of life whatsoever, of course you could be metaltal this baby. So again, we have to keep in mind that this halacha that we have over here, it's really, I don't know how germane it is nowadays, unless you're talking about a baby that's a stillborn, that's not alive. But a baby that shows life, that has chance of survival, of course we have to be Mechal Shabbos, and it's not Asal Taltaloi.
So as far as 500 years ago, it was still accurate an 8-month-old baby?
I don't know. I can't tell you historically. I can't tell you historically how far back it was. But yeah, in the time of the Mechaber, apparently it still was, yeah.
What's the difference between never a baby who has some disease, who's going to last a year or something like that with that disease?
Right.
We let them live, and we do everything.
A year is a ben kayama. A year, once a baby lives 30 days, that's called a ben kayama. That's a viable life. Now, the doctors could stand here and they could say till they're blue that this baby's not going to survive past a year. They don't know.
This kid is going to live a month also.
So which kid? Which kid are we talking about?
What?
Which kid are we talking about? The Mechaber is addressing the Vadai Ben Shmaina that in the times of the Mechaber did not have a chance of survival. That's the baby that the Brisa said is like an Evan, is Muktzah.
So what is it to get to Ben Kayama? Because as far as I think what I've read, Moshe says that a baby like this, let's say he's going to live only a while, doesn't matter. You bring him to the world and so on.
Absolutely.
The birth and all of that. Why?
Ooh, yeah.
Because the whole purpose of the neshama is to go to the next world, and the only way, the ticket to the next world is to go through this world.
Got to be here first.
So that's what he says. So that's where you let him be born, no matter what condition or whatever it is.
Yeah, but in halacha, a nefel, a baby that's not going to live 30 days is called a nefel.
Yeah.
That's not a ben kayama. We're not Mechal Shabbos for something that's not a viable life.
I
consider it ben kayama.
You know, if that's what he says, and that's the reason and all of that, then, what's the difference if it's a month?
Apparently there is. Chazal say that there's a difference.
Or half a year,
Chazal say 30 days. All right. The next halacha over here, this is very pertinent. The Mechaber says, even this baby who's muktzah, aval imay shaycha alav, the mother is allowed to bend over the baby, uminikasai, and nurse the baby, mipnei tsar hachalav shemitzara, because she could be engorged with milk, and that is going to cause her a tremendous amount of tsar, and therefore she's allowed to bend over the baby and let the baby take the breast and let the baby nurse. Now the chiddush of this halacha, if you look in the Gemara in Shabbos, what Taisus says is that we're not choishish that she's going to come to handle the baby who's muktzah, right? Because otherwise, what's the chiddush over here? What's she doing? She's not doing anything. So the chiddush is that we're afraid she's leaning over the baby, she's going to nurse the baby, so ultimately she's going to handle the baby. Says Taisus, no, we're not choishish. And since she's in tsar, we allowed her to do this, which is also interesting because the Mechaber hinges this heter on the fact that she's in pain. What's interesting is that the Brisa in Shabbos doesn't say that. The Brisa in Shabbos says the reason it's mutter is because there's a sakana. We know that if a woman is engorged, she could get a breast infection, which very easily could turn into a blood infection. So the Brisa says that it's mutter b'pnei sakana. So there's a Taisus in Shabbos that brings down the Shitas HaRashba, who says that even if you know there's no sakana, but still it's mutter because of tsar. And that's easy to understand because it's a drabanan. Muktzah is a drabanan. And the drabanan b'makom tsar, we're matir b'makom tsar. The Mechaber continues, v'chein hi ba'atzma, the woman herself, we're talking about a baby who we think is ke'even, right? Let's remember, we're talking about a baby that we don't expect to survive. A baby like that very often is not going to nurse. So therefore the Mechaber says, v'chein hi ba'atzma, she on her own, yechayla lahaitzi biyada hechalav hamitzaroisa. She's allowed to go ahead and express the milk without the baby nursing. Now this is interesting. This could be one of these funny little siyata d'shmayas. When I was here by the shir on Sunday night, you were talking about mefarik, right? The malacha of mefarik, which is a teld of dash. The problem with a woman expressing her milk is a problem of mefarik. So you were just discussing mefarik. Here we are right again. We're talking about mefarik. That's the problem. Milking a cow is mefarik. It's a teld of dash. So let's see. So the Mechaber says over here, this, the Mishnah Berurah says, this that we allow her to express her milk. Let's go down to Mishnah Berurah, Sivkat and Lamed Beis, Lahaitzi biyada, says the Mishnah Berurah, al ha'oretz. She's allowed to express the milk onto the ground, not into a container. Dein zeh kederech mefarek, kevin shahilach le'ibud. This is no longer mefarek, because the derech of mefarek is only when you want to extract something and you want to keep it, you want to save it. But to extract something that it should go li'ibud, that's not kederech mefarik. So now it's mutter, ibamakim tsar. Now the Mishnah Berurah gives another reason why it's mutter. Va'ai have a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, the potter. It's also a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. Again, the point of mefarik is to have something. The point of mefarik is not to do something so that there shouldn't be tsar. That's a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, which is also mutter d'Rabbanan. When we show tsar loy gazru, and in the makom tsar they weren't geyser. The Chacham didn't answer this. K'may meifis mursa, like the same halacha that we have by extracting the pus from a pimple or from an abscess, which is also mefarik, but it's mutter b'makom tsar, and also because it's a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. Now, this halacha is very pertinent sometimes to nursing women. What? No, tzricha legufa is I need the milk. Is mefarik because I need the milk. That's tzricha legufa. Over here I don't need the milk at all. I need to take away my tsar. That's a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. Now this is a halacha that is often very pertinent by nursing women. I remember the first time I had this shaila with my wife was we had a nursing baby at home, and we had a newborn baby that was in the hospital, and my wife had to be in the hospital over Shabbos with the baby. And to top it off, the nursing baby was allergic to every formula under the sun. This baby couldn't have anything, even these fancy formulas that cost a fortune and a half because they're pre-digested. And this baby couldn't have anything. The only thing he could have was mommy's milk. So my wife couldn't risk losing her milk. So she had to nurse. She had to express the milk. So I knew that there's a way to make it mutter. So I called up Reb Reuven. I asked Reb Reuven, what's the right way to do it? So what he told me then was, he said, take a manual pump, not an electric pump, take a manual pump, put salt inside the container. So now when the milk is expressed, it goes right away onto the salt, and it's ruined. So again, you're doing it li'ibud, and since you're doing it li'ibud, it's not mefarik, it's not kederech mefarik, and it's mutter. And interesting, I see that the Dirshu Taka brings down over here, in 32, he brings down, he's talking about just a woman who has an excess of milk, which is also a problem. She's engorged, and the baby is not going to drink it all. So she also has a problem. She has to unload that milk. So Hara Chazanish, you bring down for the Chazanish. She could use a pump, like Hashmalis, a manual one, not an electric one. Now what he says is, Al Yidesha Taklis L'Masheva Chomer, some kind of a liquid that's going to spoil it, vinegar or something. She kalkal sakolav, she yishav l'saycha. That's one idea. And another thing that they bring down over here is that if you have to pump it into a container and you don't have anything handy You don't have salt. You don't have vinegar. So you don't have anything that you could put into the container to ruin the milk. So what should you do? So he brings down from Rav Shlomo Zalman that what you could do is you could pump less than, what does he say? A gregris, less than a dried fig's worth. You could pump and then open up the pump and spill it out. Because that's not considered being mefarik an amount that's choshev. And we know in Masechta Shabbos we have this all the time. To be over the malacha of haitzah, you have to carry a certain size. To be over the malacha of kaisiv, you have to write a certain amount. So the same thing, to do mefarik, you have to be mefarik an amount of a substance that's chashuv. So if you mefarik a little bit, you pour it out, so then you don't have a problem of mefarik.
What do they do to the cows before they have the...
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I think they put a piece of bread, and it was considered like they're putting it into the food or whatever.
I'm trying to remember. The Gemara in Shabbos talks about it, but I don't remember.
It's like squeezing lemon into a salad that you need, that you're going to have right away.
Okay. Zokt the... Okay, the Mechaber in Sif Tes. Now, this needs some background. The first three words of the Mechaber says, Miyashrim Evrei Havlod. We can straighten out the limbs of the newborn baby, shenisparku, that have become dislocated, machmas tsar haleda, because of the travails of childbirth. Now, it's very interesting. When a baby is born, even nowadays, a baby is born, doctor takes out the baby, hands the baby to the nurse grabs the baby, takes the baby over. I like to call it the baby toaster. All my babies, that's what I called it. You have the mashinka over there with the heat element on top. So right away, the nurse takes the baby, straightens out the arms, straightens out the legs, pops back the shoulders, straightens out the spine. And it seems to me at first glance that this is what the Mechaber is referring to. The Mechaber is referring to straightening out the limbs of the baby. Now, I called a pediatrician this morning, and I asked him what the physiology of this is. Is it that the joints of a newborn baby are somewhat loose? You know, it's such a brand new baby. The joints are easy. We do know that it is easy to dislocate something in a baby. So is it that this has to be done? Or is it talking about something that becomes dislocated? We know when there's a very large baby, sometimes the doctor has to dislocate the shoulder to allow the shoulders to pass through, because if you don't dislocate the shoulder, you get a broken collarbone. So you have a few choices. You have a cesarean, which they don't want to do, right? So you can take your chances and see what happens, but then you could end up with a broken collarbone. Or you could dislocate the shoulder, compact the baby, take the baby out, and then pop the shoulder back. There are those that don't like that because they say that it creates a problem with the shoulder later in life, that damage to the socket could become a permanent issue. But in any case, the doctor told me that no, the joints of a baby are fine, and they don't really require straightening out. Which again, I'm mentioning it because in the Rishonim, where the Mechaber is coming from, it's a little bit hard to tell if what we're doing over here is correcting damage, or we're doing something that was just the normal way to do things, that they felt that this has to be done every time a baby is born. And we'll get back to this. The background over here, before we see the Mishnah Berurah. We have to see this before we see the Mishnah Berurah, otherwise we're not going to know what the Mishnah Berurah is talking about. There are three prominent sources in Masechta Shabbos for this halacha. In Perichav Beis Mishnah Vav, we have a Mishnah in Shabbos that says, Ein ma'atzvin es hakoton. And Rashi over there says, we don't straighten out the limbs of a newborn baby on Shabbos. That's a Mishnah. Then we have a Gemara on Chav Gimel Amud Aleph. We have a Machlokes Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshis. Over there, the Gemara says Asuve Yenuka, and again Rashi says, "What's Asuve Yenuka?" Again, straightening out the limbs of a baby. Rashi uses a slightly different lashon over there, but again, it's some form of straightening out the limbs of a baby. Is a Machlokes Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshis. Rav Nachman oiser. Rav Nachman says you can't. Rav Sheshis mater. Rav Sheshis says you can. Now right away we have a problem. Rav Sheshes is an Amora. Rav Sheshes can't be chaylik on a Mishnah. Right? And I just told you the Mishnah says, Ein ma'atzvin. You're not allowed to straighten out the limbs of a baby. So we have to reconcile the Mishnah with the Gemara. That's right away a problem that the Rishonim have. So we have basically two different drachim in the Rishonim of how to reconcile this problem. We have Rashi and Tosfos, and then we have the Rosh, and perhaps, depending on how you read the Rishonim, some other Rishonim may hold like the Rosh as well. Rashi and Tosfos, the way they reconcile it is, they say like this. They say the Mishnah of Ein Ma'atzvin, that's referring specifically to the vertebrae of the spine. If the vertebrae of the spine are not properly aligned when the baby comes out, the Mishnah says Ein Ma'atzvin es hakotan. You cannot do some sort of manipulation with your hands to straighten out the vertebrae. And the reason for this is because it's a mechsi keboine. It looks like building. It looks like you're taking this assembly and you're putting it together the right way. So it's mechsi keboine and it's aser. That's the Mishnah. No, it would be the Rabban. Comes the machlokes from Nachman and Rav Sheshes, asu ve'yenuka. What's that talking about? Asu ve'yenuka is talking about what I mentioned first. When the baby comes out, straightening out the arms, straightening out the legs. That's a machlokes from Nachman and Rav Sheshes. What's the machlokes? Rav Nachman holds it's aser because he holds it's tikkun. It's like tikkun kli. It's a tolda of makeh b'patish. It's you're taking a kli that's somewhat broken and you're fixing it. So Rav Nachman says it's aser. Rav Sheshes says it's mutter. Why? Because Rav Sheshes says there's no such thing as makeh b'patish on a mensch. A mensch is not a kli. And he brings rayas in the Gemara. There's no such thing as tikkun kli by a person. So again, the Mishnah aser is straightening out the vertebrae, and Rav Sheshes is matir straightening out the rest of the limbs. And we paskin like Rav Sheshes. The Mishnah Berurah is going to say that that's the source of this mechaber. This mechaber says miyashrim evrei havlod shenisparku, because we paskin like Rav Sheshes, and you're allowed to go straighten out the limbs of a baby because there's no such thing as makeh b'patish on a mensch. The Rosh has a different way of reconciling this. The Rosh says the Mishnah of Ein Ma'atzvin, that's talking about this. That's talking about straightening out the limbs of a baby. Rosh says that's a Mishnah. Not allowed to do that because to go be a dayim and fix limbs that were somewhat dislocated, that you're not allowed to do. That's mechsi kabaina. That's aser. Rav Sheshes. What's Rav Sheshes matter when he says asu ve'yenuka? Asu ve'yenuka is they would swaddle the baby tightly in a wrapping, in a cloth, and that would have the effect of straightening out, kind of like a splint. That would have the effect of straightening out the limbs. That Rav Sheshes is matir because it's not biyodayim. The last piece of this is that we have another Gemara on Kuf Chaf Tesam and Beis where Rav Nachman says that melafafin, you're allowed to swaddle the baby. So wait a second. Rav Nachman, according to the Rosh, just said you're not allowed to swaddle the baby. Rav Sheshes says you're allowed to swaddle the baby. So what's Rav Nachman saying you're allowed to swaddle the baby? Says the Rosh, that's on Yom HaLeida. Right when the baby is born, you are allowed to do it. Because right when the baby is born, it's not Mechsi Kabaina. That's just the normal way of taking care of a baby. So that's when you're allowed to do it. Now, with that background, let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. We'll start with Ois Katan Lamed Gimel. Miyashrim, you're allowed to straighten out the limbs. Zaktachav Tzchayim B'yadayim. We're talking about doing something in action with your hands. Machmas Tsar Leida, Ois Katan Lamed Dalet. Kasav HaMagen Avram. The Magen Avram says, this that you're allowed to straighten out the limbs, dafka b'yom haleida, is only b'yom haleida, aval achakach aser. But after that, it's aser. What's this Magen Avram coming from? This Magen Avram is paskening like the Rosh. The Magen Avram is saying over here, this that you're allowed to do a maisa b'yodayim, that's Rav Sheshes, who's mati b'yodayim, that's only on Yom HaLeida. That's, you're only allowed to do it in Yom HaLeda. Anything else is the Mishnah that asks b'yadayim. You're not allowed to do it. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Aval be'emes meharbe paiskim mashbedein chilik bazeh. Rashi and Tosfos, who are miyashiv the stira between the Rishayshis and the Mishnah the other way, they say there's no chilik. You're allowed to do b'yadayim. You're allowed to straighten out the limbs all the time. It's always mutter. V'ayin b'biyar agra shekasav shegam kein dasa shulchan aruch lahakel bazeh kamaisam. That's where the shulchan aruch is coming from. V'al kein ein lahachmer bazeh. There's no room for a chumrah over here. When we call makayim in the sparka chulyu shel shedra mimkaima, but if the vertebrae get displaced, lekulei alma asa liyashib yadai chulyu shel shedra akas al kaverta. You're not allowed to manipulate the vertebrae back into position. The mechse kabaina because it's asa because it's mechse kabaina. Im loy b'yayim haleda except on the yayim haleda. The oz yesh l'tzadid lahakel af bazeh. That you're allowed to do. On the Yom HaLeda, you're allowed to do whatever you want. And I see I wrote down over here, that's not germane to this. All right. Just, I would point out again that if there's any risk to the baby, if there's any question over here of intense tsar to the baby, or if there's, of course, a shiloh of pikuach nefesh, then all of this is gone. Then you're allowed to do whatever you have to do. We're talking about where there's no risk of permanent damage. There's no risk the baby is not in pain, the baby is not suffering, then we have these issues.
Nothing not so terrible with that.
Oh, so you want to do, could you do a chiropractic manipulation on Shabbos? It would seem from here that you are not. Now, the only question that I would have with that is, this mechzi keboine is, by a baby, if you're manipulating the vertebrae into place, there's something that you can see. There's something that's discernible. If you're talking about a chiropractor coming and stretching you this way and doing a pop, that sounds more to me like something that's brought down here in the Dirshu in 35. Not 35. Where is it? Was it 35? 30. Yeah, 34. He talks about cracking knuckles. You're allowed to crack your knuckles on Shabbos. So he says that's nothing. You're not going ahead. He brings down from the Eichel Avram. He brings down. You're not resetting bones. That's not something that's damaged that you're repairing. That's not. He says that's not a problem at all. He also talks over here about putting what? Stretching, right? You're not that. Right, that's not mezgiban at all, because over there what you're doing is you're stretching the muscle. It's nothing to do with the bones or anything.
One of the things that chiropractors do is see like your shoulders or anything, your hips or anything, they do certain adjustments that,
that pop them in and pop them out. I see that's if you're relocating things. That over there I see the shiloh, but on my experiences with chiropractors, most of what they do is there's nothing really to see. There's nothing really, you can see the effects. You can see the effects of it. He speaks over here also in the Dirshu about things like wearing retainers, because the retainers are straightening out your teeth. So he says that's not a problem, wearing a retainer, because that's not something that something is off and now we pop in something and boom, we make it right. It takes 5 years. It takes 5 years and $5,000. So it's not. That's not something that you could say is mechzi kabaina. He also brings down over here the question of a child who has to wear a brace on his legs so that the legs should be in the proper position, right? I don't know. I forgot what it's called. Like when you have the kids who walk like this and they have to bring them back in. So it's interesting. He does bring down. This was a little bit of a chiddush to me. Where did you bring this down from? 36. It was in 36, but I'm looking for the source. That where mater the rabbanans b'makom tsar, but if there's going to be tremendous tsar later in life, unless you correct something now, that's also called b'makom tsar, and we would be mater the rabbanan for that as well. Okay, let's go a little bit weiter. The Mechaber says in Sifkat Yud Aleph, Im nafla arlas geroin havlod. Now, I have seen this, I've seen people who translate this as the epiglottis, and I think that is not correct. I think that this is referring to the uvula, which is that little thing that hangs in the back of your throat if you look in the mirror. Im nafla arlas geroin havlad. If that falls down and it's blocking the throat, mutter lasam etzba l'soich piv. You're allowed to put a finger into the mouth, down the throat, ulasalik ha'orlo l'b'kaima, and to move it back to its place. Afal pi shepa'amim shemeki, even though that sometimes causes a child to vomit. Now we know, we've seen previously in the Mishnah Berurah that apiktivizun is also on Shabbos, an emetic. You're not allowed to give somebody an emetic on Shabbos to make him throw up. That's, again, gzera shchika samamonim. You're not allowed to do that. So apparently there was a havamina over here to say that this should be maybe also because of apiktivizun. He says, certainly it isn't. It's a bekuach nefesh. Now, just as an interesting point of fact, I had this, not by baby. I had it by myself. I suffer from reflux. And it happened to me on a Friday night that I had a very, very bad bout of acid reflux while I was sleeping. And I was tired enough, I was exhausted enough that I slept through it. Usually it wakes you up. I mean, if anybody's ever experienced it, it's like battery acid in your throat. I mean, it's gefährlich. But I slept through it. When I woke up in the morning, I was choking. And I ran to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror, and the uvula had swollen from it was like a chemical burn from acid. So it had swollen. And I pushed it, I was able to breathe. Baruch Hashem, I was able to breathe. Speaking was very, very hard. Every time I tried to talk, I remember I ran down the block, there was a doctor, I asked him what to do. So he told me to gargle with ice water. And after I gargle with ice water, I should eat a pint of ice cream. Because the cold. And he told me, he said, this is something that medical students and law students suffer from all the time. So I said, why? He said, because Friday night they go out and they get drunk. And they go back to the dormitory and they sleep. And the alcohol dehydrates them. And also the alcohol, they reflux the alcohol, and the same thing happens. He says, so unfortunately, medical doctors and lawyers know all about this. He says, that's the remedy. Gargle with ice water and eat a pint of ice cream, and you'll be fine.
When you do have protein,
yeah.
That's a beneficial thing. You want it to throw up.
Right, over here you don't. Right, it is somewhat difficult to understand why the Mechaber felt that he had to let you know this. And the truth is that a lot of the psik.
But still, it's not the low native.
So psik ratio, it's not even a psik ratio. It's not a psik ratio. It's not a psik ratio. Because the Mechaber himself says, Shepa'omim Shemeki. That's something important to realize, by the way, about whenever we mention psik ratio. Psik ratio, we're supposed to end at 10? Is that the? Right. Psik ratio is not a rove. Chickens die every time you cut their heads off. It's not a rove. Psik ratio is certain. This is not certain. All right, so you see, I'm sure it won't be this way. We started a little bit late tonight also because of the technology. But if we would have started with the Musar tonight, we wouldn't have finished the Mishnah Berurah. So we'll get it right. And one other thing I would mention is that for the Musar, my intent right now is to do Pirkei Avos. So that's Mitzvah Hashem will begin next time. Okay, Yasha Koyach.